Hey all, Elio here with another video playing the altered trading card game. This time we are going to be playing on the official Board Game Arena platform, and I'll also actually be going through replays this time, seeing how that format works. It'll give me a little bit more time to think through and explain my logic and thinking, which may work better for the viewer. Let me know what you think. Do you like watching live games? Do you like watching me have more detailed times for my explanations? Or should I be making both? I'm going to be playing my Kojo and Buddha list that is based around the Foundry Axiom Bastion. So this card is a landmark that lets you exhaust it once per turn to activate the reserve abilities of a card that you play from hand. There's a lot of really strong cards here that synergize with that. Two rare copies of the Ratatasker, which comes out as a 4/4 for 1 mana when activated with the Foundry. Salvager can just give you plenty of resources. If you're able to activate it with Foundry just once, plus play it from the yard, usually you have enough resources that you're not going to be running out of anything throughout the game. One of my uniques, this Lyra Navigator, is insane with the Foundry. Comes in play for 1 mana, and with that, giving 3 boosts plus an additional 2 boosts split up, one of which can go on itself, so it's pretty easy to have that other unit for it if it's not just the Buddha that is already out from our hero's ability. But with that, we're getting a 6, 5, 7 worth of stats spread across the board for 1 mana. We can even intimidate that Lyra Navigator back to our hand, only losing 1, 0, 2 of those stats, and being able to play that again the next turn for another insane value play. That's 3 mana still for 5, 5, 5 worth of stats, and we get the card back to do it again next round. Intimidation is also just great for getting rid of something on our opponent's board temporarily to help us win a lane. Doing this on something like a Ortis Carrier or Lyra Festival can also just set our opponent really far back when they're trying to do something that they thought was developing for the next turn. 2 copies of Mana Eruption to just be a kind of catch-all removal. Maybe it's something that we can use against a Kraken or some other big thing that is going to spell a lot of trouble for us. Otherwise, often we're happy to mana this if it's not the kind of deck where we're afraid of that happening. Between the 3 Haven Bouncers and the 2 Order Spy, we do have 5 copies of main deck Sabotage, which I like being able to have Sabotage whenever I'm playing anything. And people don't always expect it out of red, particularly the Spies, so it's nice to have. Other cards aren't too surprising with our picks. The main thing that I would call out is that we are running 2 rare Bravos Tracer plus the 3rd copy, and 3 copies of Helping Hand, which synergize pretty nice. This is something just to help us push through our lane, and is going to be a strong play even if we do not have the Foundry out. The Helping Hand also works well with all of our things that are often better played from the reserve if I don't have Foundry, once again, by letting them get additional value to be played again. And that's the deck. We'll jump into a couple of games, and you can see how it plays. Okay, so looking at this hand, I want to keep the Foundry, absolutely. It's key to the deck. It's the best card in the deck. And I'd also like to keep some Sabotage. I definitely want to keep at least 1 Bouncer. But then past that, I probably want to make sure that I have enough fuel, so I'll keep the Salvager. I'm fine also not using Foundry on the Bouncer, so next turn I can Bouncer, no Foundry, Salvager for a good turn 2 follow-up play. Opponent opens with Ortis Carrier. We could try to take a free lane rather than play the Foundry out, but we want to go ahead and get this developed and get our game plan going. We get rid of the rat there. I really like having Sabotage. It's a tough decision. I think you could argue for keeping the rat for sure, but I want to mess with my opponent's resources. It may have been right to keep the rat. We can open with the Salvager here, put presence on both sides of the board, and it'll let us see what comes into the yard, which may be something that we can actually play this turn. It is. We lucked out hitting the rat. He plays the Legate and gives it sleep, so we're still winning both lanes. I could play the rat to the right lane or the left lane just to try to make sure I win that lane, but that doesn't actually make sense because if I do that, my opponent can just play to the opposite lane and I'm winning by 1 in each. Plus the thing that he may play is going to be a Legate, which I'm fine if he's playing that to not get Sabotage value. So I'll let this happen. I'm going to lose one of the rat or the salvager, but this also just makes sure I have something in my yard. Hopefully he gets rid of the rat because we're actually trying to keep resources longer term. He does get rid of the rat, which is good, again, for us. I mean, both are fine, but for what we're trying to do here with our 3 mana plus 2 mana follow-up play, matters. We do have 2 spies and a bouncer now. At this point, I don't need 3 sabotage effects, so it makes sense getting rid of the bouncer this time and keeping the tracer in hand. Opponent plays a spy, which is unfortunately pretty good. We don't want to waste our sabotage value. We also don't really care about the left lane. We can play the tracer out and guarantee that we're winning that lane with the exception of some pretty unplayed 2-drops. So we'll go ahead and do that and trade 1 for 1 here, continuing to advance on the board. Our opponent doesn't have a bureaucrat out, so their board's going to start a lot more empty this next turn. And luckily, the legate did get sabotage value there. We are looking to sabotage that legate to make sure that he doesn't run us out of resources. We get rid of the mana ramp. It's not super useful at this point, and having a rare rat here is good. They, again, mana. We'll open with a spy on the legate. And we can do that on the left side, making sure that we win both lanes. We don't need to Foundry initially. We could, but saving it lets us either spy the second time with Foundry, if he doesn't play his spy from the reserve, or alternatively, we can play a big rat, and we're happy with either of those. They play a Quetzalcoatl. They do sleep it, so we're winning that lane by 2. The right lane we're winning by 1. We can go ahead and get rid of that spy as said, and we'll do that to the right lane to make sure that we're winning both lanes by as much as we can. He could potentially play something out here, and he in fact does. The Thoth also goes to sleep, so another time where we're winning 2 lanes, but next turn he's going to have a lot of units out. So next round may be just kind of a pass for us, or we'll try to win just 1 lane. We'll see what happens. We're only 2 away at this point, though, and just from our board, our units on the reserve, we're threatening 6 power, 6/6/6 for just 4 mana. And so despite our opponent having so many things here, we can discard this Haven pretty safely. We definitely don't need to. So now we're looking at 8/8/8 power, just for 4 mana, which is definitely going to be enough to take that right lane. There's a question of, can we actually also take the left lane somehow? We effectively have 3 units that are all 4/4/4 of power. The rat is actually 5. So we could tie on right and then take left, forcing him to play something out from his hand. But we're not really worried about him advancing because he's so far behind. So we'd rather make sure that we save this power as we need it. So we can open up with the Haven. He does pass. Again, we could tie it, but we'd rather just keep that in hand. It doesn't matter which lane we go here necessarily. We take the water, though, because one of the things that we have in the deck is Sun Wukong, which has a lot stronger mountain, as well as Tiny Gems. And those are strong on mountain, and both weak on water. With him already having presence in the left lane of this 3/3/2, we don't want that to be the lane where we're contesting mountain. We'd rather it be the lane that doesn't have a sleeping threat. We are first player here also, and there's the Sun Wukong that we were hoping for. We're able to play just a ton of power this turn, so despite whatever he may intend to do, it's extremely unlikely he's going to be able to handle this. We open with a Tomo. It prevents us from having to show our hand in terms of deciding which Foundry to do. He does play Isatok, and at this point, if he sleeps this, then we can have enough power to overcome anything coming out of his reserve. If he doesn't sleep it, then he's going to just be running lower on resources, and he's got a lot of places to advance. and he's not going to have his soldier next turn. So we're not surprised to see that he sleeps it to try to go there, but it is a little greedy. This lets us play our Sun Wukong here, though. At this point, we are down just one, but we've got a 5 play in our hands, and he's only adding 3 to the board. So Rat comes out, takes the game, and it is a pretty decisive dub. Okay, up against Fen. This is definitely a Foundry keep, strongest card in the deck. We want to have it each time. Fen's always going to have things in reserve due to their ability, so we're pretty happy keeping both of these sabotage cards. Opponent starts out with an Inkcaster. As we usually do, we're going to play out the Foundry and develop it. We're not trying to just win a lane and lose up that sabotage value. We'd much rather be able to play each of those cards and actually get something that we're removing. We get a Salvager or a Tracer out of our choices there. We keep the Salvager because it gives us a 1-mana play, and now we have the choice of what are we going to be using the Foundry on? Do we want to use it on the Salvager and resupply and then play a Spy or Bouncer? Or do we want to use it on the Spy to get a little bit more value? It is the case that with that resupply, we're going to be overflowed by default, unless he has a Tanuki. But we'll go ahead and use the Foundry on the Spy so that we don't overflow our yard, and we'll open up with the Spy and the Cloth Cocoon so that we can try to keep around our Foundry. That leaves him with likely just 2 copies of the Cloth Cocoon left in deck at most for dealing with our Foundry, so hopefully this gets to stick around for a while. He plays a pretty cool, unique Sandman that sleeps both on entry from hand and reserve. It has the extra boost effect, which is neat, and with his extra mana there, he gets to draw a card when he's playing it from his hand right now. This will cause him to advance this lane, but we'll also be advancing, so as this is, we'll be going forward on both. He did have the option to sleep us, but he decides that he wants to use that on the Buddha. He is probably a little disappointed, though, to see us actually play the Salvager out, so now we have extra value next turn, and we're still advancing on this lane. We get a Pathfinder and another Salvager. We're not seeing the brown-blue place out yet. Oh, no, sorry, we are seeing it right there. So that does give us a consideration of trying to keep this, just because it's going to be a pretty good value in that location. If we try to win the left side this time, then Pathfinder is going to give us a 3 power for 2 mana play on both things there. And it is likely that we end up going for this. That being said, we put it back because we want to, as we often do, keep as many resources as we can, and the resupply is going to just be more valuable for us. The other thing to note is that in the pink colors, there's a lot of things that just don't give all 3 stats, and so these 1/1s often win the lanes, even when your opponent plays something there. So playing the Pathfinder just to have it win the same amount that the Salvager would, could feel bad. We go ahead and open with a Bouncer. We can get rid of his super sick unique. We do use the Foundry on the Bouncer rather than saving for the Salvager because we're already looking at being overflowed here. Instead, what we'll do is we'll play out something from our yard, which we do choose the Salvager. This is, as said, going to keep us overflowed, but it gives us a little bit more choice, and we don't necessarily get super excited about playing the Bouncer from reserve, so we're happy to get rid of that. With his super sick Rare Alice on the left, he's also going to be able to sabotage us. So now, since we have this extra Salvager out, resupplying our yard, he gets to sabotage something, but we'll still go into the next turn with 2 things out. we had no hope of winning the left lane with that 6 green there. So we're happy trading 1 for 1 here. And he's got on his side instead a lot of overflow uh, that he's going to have to get rid of something. 2 things, in fact. He gets rid of the rat for us, which is unsurprising. It's the most power for that 3 mana. I'm going to compare it to the bouncer. But at least we still have some things here. We don't need this helping hand with what we have. We've already played a Tracer this game, so we go ahead and get rid of that. We see a Paint Prison from his side. We're a little wary of that coming out and hitting our Foundry, so we do want to open up with a Foundry play. We choose to do the Salvager on the left, and now we have redundancy against any removal on our Foundry. We do want to play that out. I'll also note that he uses After You from the Alice to try to bide his time and see what we do. Playing this out avoids this being Tanuki'd, and now guarantees that we'll have at least one of these effects available to us, and makes this available for the Ratatasker. So now this Paint Prison isn't as good, certainly not as good against our permanents. We do some board development, currently tied with him on green. And he does use the Paint Prison in his hand, discarding the one in the reserve. Was curious to see what he would hit here, thinking that he might hit one of the Foundries, but he instead hits our thing on the right to prevent us from advancing there, and doesn't put any more value on top of our deck, since what he hit was the Buddha. We put back the Haven. The Haven honestly often feels bad, but here we already have our 2 slots filled, and so we don't need that. We'd rather keep the Tracer. That's going to give us more power. Opponent builds out the board to the left again with that 3 power. The Tracer that is in our hand will be able to beat that, so that's going to be kind of exciting. He plays a Tinkerbell, which doesn't sabotage this turn, which is good because we still have the Tracer that we would like to play Helping Hand on. We do play it on the right to beat this Tinkerbell value. I think we could have gone either way with this, but ultimately we're going to win. This ensures that we win the right lane with just the Tracer. With the additional 3 power being able to come in on either side, the Tracer would not have been enough to beat this Hather. Doing this lets us keep the Tracer around, as said, and we don't need to play the Rat out, letting us save it for a future turn. I wasn't actually sure when playing this game whether or not the Foundries would, when double activated, create the Rat, make the Rat big. If I had known that they do affect it, which they do, I could have played that to the left and won that lane as well. However, I kept it in my hand thinking that it wouldn't work, and ended up where I did. Continue to build out on both sides. He does hit us with a Sabotage, hitting our cheaper thing. We can still play the trainee out, though, which we'll do to dodge any Tanuki effects that he may have in hand. At this point, he does build out on left, which is a little scary to us. It certainly makes us think that Cloth Cocoon is coming out there. But we'll build out on the right either way to force that we're winning that lane as well. And if he Cloth Cocoons the trainee on the left side, then we'll once again trade 1 for 1. It's not a Cloth Cocoon, though. It is, in fact, Off You Go, which for our Rat will be bye-bye. So once again, we trade lanes. He wins the right lane, and we win the left lane this time. We're getting to the point of the game, though, where the pink player is on Founding Crowbar, and now their ability, which was an advantage early on in the game, giving them basically an extra card in the resupply zone, is now a disadvantage because they're basically forced to mana each turn, and now it's sort of like, instead of having 2 cards in hand to play with, one of those cards goes straight to the reserve. So being at this point against this player feels pretty good. We skipped mana last time, but this time we're not. And at 8 mana, we have the ability to um, play some of the things in our hand, but not all. We can play basically 3 out of the 4 cards available to us. So we'll see what they open up with. It's another Hather. The fact that this doesn't hit water, and we know that this doesn't hit water, really makes it seem like he's not going to be able to. So we can save this Pathfinder, expecting that this will be able to take this lane. And for now, again, we'll dodge Chinooki's, play from our reserve first, and see what he does. Him playing out a Hatter from hand feels great for us, because we can just take that with the blue. And despite the anchor effect here, there's nothing that he can do to stop us. This is kind of one of the downsides of much of what you're doing in pink, is that you don't have all 3 colors. So in this turn, he was stuck with no ability to really pay to blue, and both of these things paid to blue. So he could have arguably off you go'd there, but with our hand, it still wouldn't have been enough. So, winning both lanes, we go through and do a little flexing with our huge Wukong to prevent him from advancing anyway, and it really never mattered. We take the win. Okay, that's all the games this time. Let me know if you'd like to see more games, less games, 1 game at a time, and let me know what you thought about the format of going through the replay rather than playing it live. Open to any and all feedback, and if you like what you saw, please subscribe to the channel. In terms of how the deck actually played out, I also brought this to our local weekly event, and it did pretty well. Went 3-0. Things that I would change. I don't think that you need 3 copies of Sun Wukong. I would like for one of those to be another Foundry Armorer, but I only currently have 1 Foundry Armorer. And the common Bravos Bastion just doesn't feel that great. I would definitely get rid of at least 1 and replace it with an Intimidation. But you can also consider downgrading either the Ratataskers or the Bravos Tracers to upgrade these Havens. I don't think that I necessarily want all 3 rare Havens in addition to the 3 rare Foundries, just because I don't want to... I'm often replacing those Havens with the Foundry, but it wouldn't be horrible. They do resupply, so they do get that value coming in, and the 2 of them synergize in a way. Thank you again for watching, and hope you enjoyed the video.